Ah, the good old days, when you could invent something completely untested, slap it in a bottle or a beauty cream, and call it progress. Who needs safety standards when you've got vibes? Today we're spotlighting 5 inventors who brought the world game-changing ideas, except those games came with a body count. Whether they gave us radioactive face cream or gas that literally poisoned the planet, these folks would get dragged through court in 2025. Welcome to History's Hot Messes. Today's episode: 5 inventors who'd get sued today. Cocaine in Coca-Cola, John Pemberton. Let's start with a beverage so addictive it practically marketed itself, because it was literally laced with cocaine. Meet John Pemberton, a morphine-addicted Civil War vet turned pharmacist who whipped up Coca-Cola in 1886 as a brain tonic. The original recipe? A blend of coca leaf extract, yes, that coca, and caffeine-rich cola nuts. It was sold as a cure-all for headaches, fatigue, and definitely not casual drug use. People couldn't get enough of it, and that's because it was, quite literally, addictive. Imagine the lawsuits today: class action claims for dependency, undisclosed drug ingredients, and a marketing pitch that makes Red Bull look like chamomile tea. But back then, just good business. Pemberton never saw the empire Coca-Cola would become, but his sugary, stimulative Frankenstein is still fizzing through history. Pemberton's motivations weren't entirely evil. He was chasing a cure for his own morphine addiction. But in trying to get clean, he may have accidentally helped create the most culturally embedded stimulant cocktail in modern consumer history. Once Coke started selling without prescriptions and picked up steam as a refreshment, the company eventually removed the cocaine. Kind of. They kept using decocainized coca leaves and never really shook the secret formula mystique that kept drinkers intrigued and thirsty for decades. Today, that original recipe would have triggered FDA seizures, DEA raids, and approximately 10 million parenting blogs. The fact that one of the world's most iconic brands was birthed from a chemical dependency says a lot about the Gilded Age. Mainly, no one was reading the fine print, and the fine print was written in cocaine dust. Radium face cream, Alexis Moussaly and Dr. Alfred Curie. Glowing skin, literally. That was the promise behind Thoradia, a 1930s French beauty line that sold radium-laced face cream. The masterminds? Pharmacist Alexis Moussaly and Alfred Curie, a totally unrelated but conveniently named doctor riding the coattails of Marie Curie's fame. Radiation was hot, figuratively and literally, and marketers went wild. Ads boasted about scientific beauty, while customers smeared slow-burn radiation onto their cheeks in the name of youth. Fast forward a few months, skin lesions, tissue damage, and in some cases, death. Lawsuits today? Oh, absolutely. Criminal charges, probably. At the time, just another glamorous day at the apothecary. And this wasn't a fringe product. Radium-infused cosmetics, toothpaste, hair tonics, and even butter were all the rage for a hot, and we do mean hot, second. There was a giddy, almost cult-like belief that radiation was a magic elixir of health and youth, long before we understood that radioactive glow was the biological equivalent of setting yourself on fire slowly. Thoradia's creators cashed in on the trust people placed in science without really delivering on the informed part. It was all spectacle, fake endorsements, misleading names, and zero oversight. Had Instagram existed, they'd have had a line of influencers with glowing skin and dying lymph nodes. A modern regulatory body would have shut them down faster than you can say litigation skincare. Leaded gasoline, Thomas Migley Jr. Thomas Migley Jr. was a chemical genius with the world's worst legacy. First, he gave us leaded gasoline, then chlorofluorocarbons, CFCs. And between those two inventions, he managed to poison people and the planet. In the 1920s, Migley found that adding tetraethyl lead to gasoline stopped engine knock. Great, except it also turned cars into rolling lead dispensers. Did Migley know it was toxic? Absolutely. He once had to take a health sabbatical after lead exposure and still defended it publicly. He even huffed it in a press conference to prove its safety, which aged about as well as radioactive face cream. By today's standards, he'd be hit with environmental lawsuits, health lawsuits, and probably a restraining order from the EPA. And here's the kicker: when CFCs started tearing a hole in the ozone layer decades later, guess who helped invent those too? Yep, Migley. The guy had a PhD in planetary sabotage. It's like if Captain Planet's villains merged into one polite man with a bow tie and a chemical lab. At the time, he was celebrated. But in hindsight, Migley might have single-handedly done more environmental damage than any non-world leader in modern history. If he were around now, he'd be the face of environmental litigation, and possibly every climate change PSA ever made. Lobotomies, Antonio Egas Moniz and Walter Freeman. Ah, the lobotomy. That charming little procedure where doctors scrambled your frontal lobe like eggs to cure everything from anxiety to unruly behaviour. Invented by Portuguese neurologist Antonio Egas Moniz in the 1930s, it was meant to be a last resort for mental illness. But leave it to American showman Walter Freeman to turn it into a nationwide sideshow. Freeman performed thousands, including ice pick lobotomies using literal ice picks and zero anaesthesia. He toured hospitals like a demented magician, turning troubled patients into docile shells. Moniz may have bagged a Nobel Prize, but Freeman made it American reality TV before reality TV existed. If they tried that today, massive medical malpractice lawsuits, revoked licenses, and probably a Netflix docuseries titled Lobotomy Nation. Patients were often institutionalised against their will, and consent was more of a vibe than a verified document. Freeman operated on children, housewives, veterans, anyone deemed difficult. Some walked out with diminished capacity, others never walked again. One even died mid-procedure, and Freeman kept going. The scariest part? This was legal at the time, promoted in newspapers, celebrated in medical journals. But today, it would be a legal and ethical nightmare. Consent violations, bodily harm, and human rights breaches would bury this practice under mountains of lawsuits and very loud think pieces. Arsenic Wallpaper, Carl Wilhelm Scheele. If you've ever looked at a beautiful Victorian parlour and thought, I bet this room could kill someone, you're not wrong. Carl Wilhelm Scheele, a Swedish chemist, created Scheele's green in the late 1700s, a pigment made with arsenic. It was vibrant, fashionable, and wildly toxic. Used in wallpaper, dresses, and even toys, this killer colour released arsenic gas in humid environments. People started mysteriously dying in exquisitely decorated rooms. Imagine the lawsuits today: wrongful death suits, product liability, class actions from grieving interior decorators. Back then, the cause was a mystery. Today, it's Exhibit A in the case of history versus common sense. Victorian society adored opulence, and Scheele's green was the Instagram filter of its time. Flattering, dramatic, and completely fake safe. But when kids started dropping dead and families experienced slow, inexplicable illness, whispers of poison paper started circulating. Still, manufacturers kept selling it. After all, it was just wallpaper, right? Modern litigation would be swift and brutal. Think lawsuits from decorators, landlords, tenants, and multiple regulatory agencies. Combine toxic exposure with marketing fraud, and you've got the class action party of the century, hosted in a parlour that might actually be trying to kill you. So next time someone says, they don't make things like they used to, maybe say, good. From radioactive moisturisers to brain poking on lunch breaks, these inventors might have changed the world, but they also nearly ended it. If they were alive today, they'd be buried under lawsuits, ethics reviews, and probably a Vice documentary titled, I Invented That. Oops. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and drop your favourite How Was This Legal Invention in the comments. Until next time, stay curious, stay sceptical, and please read the ingredient list.